How's it going, Goomy Gang? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you guys are doing awesome. Now with Season 5, we did get an aftermarket part for the Moore sniper rifle, one that I was really looking forward to, and this is known as the Blunderbuss. Well, it's actually the Jack wide mouth barrel, I think it is, and this is basically an aftermarket part for the Moore sniper rifle that turns it into the Blunderbuss shotgun from Advanced Warfare as well as COD World War II. And like I said, I was really looking forward to this one, and so with today's video, I'm going to share with you guys sort of the numbers on it, why it works like it does, give you my thoughts on it, and give you guys 2 loadouts to use for this particular gun if you're wanting to try it out. And of course, timestamps will be in the description below if you want to hop to a certain part of the video. So let's just go ahead and hop right into it. So starting with some basic information about this conversion kit, basically it turns the Moore sniper rifle into a shotgun, and with it, it basically shoots 20 projectiles or 20 little pellets out of the gun. This is basically double what the Reclaimer can do with a barrel that only shoots 10, which is still really good. 20 is kind of absurdly large. That's a huge amount of pellets, but of course there's ways to balance that. And so with this thing up close out to about 2.5 meters, these are numbers based from sim.gg, of course, shout out to them and all their good devs doing the work there. But basically out to 2.5 meters, you deal about 25 damage per pellet. And what that basically means is that it takes 8 pellets of your 20 to actually get full damage. So if you hit 10, 12, 11 pellets, whatever, it doesn't matter. If it's above 8, it's going to be capped at 200. In order to get that max 200, you have to hit at least 8, which honestly isn't too bad. Again, considering you have 20 pellets, it's pretty easy to at least hit the target, but because it does lack in the department of damage, like most shotguns have a pretty good damage per pellet up close. Look at the Reclaimer, it has like about 70 to 80 damage per pellet point blank. This thing has 25. A lot of pump actions have maybe 50 at least. So this one's definitely weaker in that regard. But again, you have 8 pellets to hit that damage cap and there's 20 pellets max. So it kind of balances out and makes it a little bit easier to hit the target. But of course, you're also at the mercy of the spread of this gun, which isn't really great. If you take a look at the spread, the base spread for this thing, it's really not super good. And it's kind of made worse by the fact that when you aim down sights, it's not really like condensing it by quite a bit. And it's almost like this weird tack stance type spread. It looks like tack stance, but it's considered aim down sights. So if you adjust your aim down sight sensitivity, that will affect it. Tack stance sensitivity does not, just throwing that out there for some information for you. But basically, it's not going to tighten that much to make a difference at really far ranges. Now, of course, you can make it to where it does have a tighter spread, but it's still not going to be that great, especially compared to most traditional shotguns that have chokes on them and make it to where you can get really precise with your aiming. So we're going to take a quick look at sim.gg to kind of get an idea of what's going on outside of this range. So if you look at 2.5 to 7.6, your damage drops per pellet to about 20. So you basically deal 160 damage per shot, which is okay. It's still a 2-shot, but it's just not really that great considering it's a Blunderbuss. Now, when you go from 7.6 to 8.9, it drops again to about 19 damage per pellet. So you deal 152. That's basically just on the cusp of getting a 2-shot. So your 2-shot potential with this gun extends out to 8.9 meters, which is really respectable. Actually, this is only really beaten by the Reclaimer, which has the best 2-shot potential in class with its pump action mode. In a practical sense, this really is hard to get because again, the spread, even though you have a lot of pellets, the spread doesn't really work in your favor. So it makes this kind of hard to hit in some ways, but it is also fun when it does work. And it does work sometimes, trust me, but it's also very inconsistent. Now out past that in all these different ranges, it basically drops down to not being a 2-shot at all. And I believe after 12.7 meters, you can't even get a hit marker, which it says that on sim.gg you can, but in game you actually can't. So just keep that in mind. Basically 12.7 meters is your minimum where you're not getting any damage at all. You can test this in the firing range where you're just not getting any hit markers. So basically, you really want to stay as close as you can to the enemy with this gun. So one of the worst things about the Blunderbuss, of course, is its rate of fire. It's very slow. This is basically 1 shot and then a reload, 1 shot. It's like the lock with 300 dual trigger. So essentially with this thing, with the quick bolt attachment on to get a better fire rate, you're essentially getting about a 50 RPM or 50 rounds per minute rate of fire with this thing, which is incredibly slow. And keep in mind that's hand tested. So basically your theoretical time to kill with this thing is going to be at least 1200 milliseconds, which is basically 1.2 seconds. That's ridiculously slow, easily one of the worst in the game. That is really the downside to this thing. Of course, this is not a traditional shotgun or gun where you just run up to someone and blast them. You kind of have to play more methodically because of that, so you have to play cat and mouse. Treat it like you would any pump action, but this thing is really bad in that department, especially considering the Reclaimer has basically half of that for its rate of fire and has better 2-shot range. Just throwing that out there for comparison's sake. Now, all the pros and cons I've talked about are basically compounded when I talk talk about the fact that this thing basically has no aim assist whatsoever when you are hip firing. I know a lot of mouse and keyboard players are probably laughing right now, but if you're a controller player and you've been playing COD for years and you have that muscle memory kind of worked in, when something throws a wrench in your muscle memory like this, it can be really awkward. And yeah, it's a skill issue in the sense that you can kind of take the time to learn it without having aim assist, but it'll probably get patched. I just want to let you guys know that this thing has no aim assist whatsoever unless you are aiming down sights. You cannot hit fire and get aim assist, which is part of the reason it's so awkward to use and difficult. If that gets fixed, which I'm sure it will soon, it'll definitely make it more usable, but it's still going to be very unforgiving and pretty difficult for pretty much anyone to use, but definitely better than where it's at now. I have two builds that I want to show you guys for the Blunderbuss. The first one is a hipfire focused, basically getting the tightest spread that you can, and so we're using pretty much everything to help with that max hipfire spread that we can. Of course, we have some basic ones we've seen before. Unfortunately, you can't rock a choke with this thing. I really wish you could, but you can't. Now, another build that you should give a try is a sprint to fire focus build, which is this one here, which is definitely more for mobility. It's not going to have as tight of a spread, but this thing already has kind of a wide spread. You can't get it super tight anyway, so sometimes it's better to just go pure mobility, or rather handling, and make it to where you can at least get your shot off quicker and not be limited by your sprint to fire speed. As for my overall thoughts on this aftermarket part, I think it needs some love. This thing is one of the worst guns in the entire game you could possibly use. Its time to kill is already abysmal. Over a second, over 1.2 seconds at least. Even if you're moving around and jumping like crazy, it's still going to make it incredibly hard to use against any decent player. Another gripe I have with it is it's so inconsistent. Because of the lack of damage per pellet, because of course there's so many pellets, it really gets so inconsistent with that widespread past like 5 meters, which is insane. Like it's just a toss-up. Like if you're 5 meters away, I could honestly say, I don't know. I might get this kill, I might not. Most likely not, because it's just so finicky, especially again, past like that 5 meter mark. It just gets so weird. You have to aim down sights, but even then, it doesn't even help that much, and it's still very inconsistent. Now, it's a niche weapon. It doesn't have to one-shot and go crazy. I'm not asking for that. I just think that it should be doing more damage per pellet, at least like, I don't know, 30 damage per pellet in its max damage range. Then it drops to something like 25, and then it drops to maybe 23 or something like that. So it's still two-shotting, decently consistent enough if it's going to have that wide spread, or they could make it to where you can equip a choke or something to get even more of a tight spread, because right now it just doesn't help. Overall, it's just such a terrible thing to use, even though it is fun when it works and you can kind of get collaterals and stuff like that. Doesn't work super well. And also, not having aim assist when you hit fire can be a bit of a downside if you're a controller player, just throwing that out there. So I hope that does get patched in, but that's all I have to say about that. And that's pretty much going to do it for this video, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, I want to know down below in the comments, what do you think about this gun, or rather this aftermarket part? Do you enjoy the Blunderbuss? Do you find it's actually pretty good in Warzone? Have you used it in multiplayer? What are your thoughts on multiplayer if you have used it there? And with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.